This video is my second one in my series of reviews on the 2022 Specialized Stumpjumper Expert. So I did a first look. This is my first ride, which is typically what I do with my videos. So this is where I literally have never taken the bike on single track yet until today. So I've been setting it up, got the suspension set up, ready to go. So I'll hit my local trails and I'll talk about the conditions and things like that as I ride. So let's get going. All right, you're witnessing the first time this bike has touched the single track. So I left the flip chip in the low position, which is the way it comes, I believe. And I did that because normally I would put it in the high position for these trails. These are really just cross-country trails. But in a week from now, actually 6 days, I'm gonna head out on a road trip. And I'm gonna go all over the Southeast and ride this bike. So I'm gonna go start in Georgia, go up to West Virginia, and then end up at my favorite place to ride, which is Pisgah National Forest. We'll see how this bike does in Pisgah. I've already had to stop and make some adjustments. Taking advantage of that swap box, so nice to have an Allen wrench set right there under the water bottle holder. I'd adjust the shifting and the brake. I forgot to untwist the brake cable. Whew. Oh my gosh. Short, tiny little downhill there, but man, can already tell the front end feels stiff. I like it. So let me kind of explain what the trails are like that I'm testing this bike on. And like I said, they're mainly cross country, but they're constantly rolling up and down most of the sections that I'll be on. These are not the type of trails that I would buy a bike like this for. However, the beauty about this kind of bike with like 140 in the front, 130 in the back, is it's okay on these trails, right? I mean, my Sentinel, Transition Sentinel, is just way too much for these trails. Like it's just not fun to ride a all mountain or enduro bike on cross-country type trails, because you get these uphill sections like I'm on right now, and it's just like driving a tank. Now, don't get me wrong, like up in the mountains on the downhills, these bikes are awesome, but a bike like this, I can already tell like it's going to be awesome on the downhills, but still decent for trails that don't have a lot of tech and steep stuff. So, and that's exactly the type of trails that we're on today. These climbs that go about 2 minutes are about as long as you'll get on these trails, but so I'm really stoked to take this bike up to the mountains. So for those of you who watched my first look video and were astute, would have noticed that this bike does not use the horse link. It uses flexible seat stays. So Specialized has used horse link on so many of their bikes, and it's a suspension design that they swore was better than every other. And now, oh man, these brakes are not broken in yet. Almost overshot that corner. So yeah, Specialized swore that the horse link was the design, but now they've gone to flexible seat stays, which I kind of applaud them because it reduces weight, reduces complexity. And if you would blindfold me, I couldn't tell you if I was on a horse link or flexible seat stay bike because I've ridden both. In fact, my Transition Sentinel is a horse link and the Spur is a flexible seat stay. And I don't notice like any reduction in performance on the Spur suspension. This suspension feels amazing. I mean, like, it is smooth. So I'll, you know, when I ride this thing up the mountains is when I'll really pay attention to the fact that it doesn't have a horse link, because the purpose of the horse link was to decouple braking from suspension. In other words, when you're hard on the brakes, it does not stiffen up the suspension. But like I said, my Spur, Transition Spur, I never really noticed any brake jacking or, you know, stiffening of the suspension when I was coming down a hill and using the rear brake hard. So heading out into the fields. Oh, it's hot. I want to get back in the shade. Most of this ride is shaded. These tires are good. I just leaned that one over just a little bit harder than I should have. These tires saved me. So the thing that has really impressed me so far about this bike, and this is why I like doing first ride video reviews, because I really start to notice differences immediately from some of the other bikes that I own, and that is just how stiff it feels. It's got a really stiff feeling front end. Kind of reminds me of the last Niner Jet 9 that I owned, that I kind of regret selling. It was right before COVID hit and I didn't know it'd be so hard to get bikes again. But yeah, it reminds me of that bike. Just poppy, fun, playful, slacker head angle than that Jet 9, so it's a bit more stable, but it feels almost just as playful. So the thing that makes this bike feel playful is the shorter chainstay and the stiff frame, especially the front end. Like the front end of this bike feels really stiff. Now, comparing it to the Spur, I do feel it's stiffer than the Spur, but it is heavier, like 3 pounds. So there's a trade-off, because I can feel the weight just a bit more. From my first look video, I weighed the bike and it's just over 29.5, I think. So it's a good weight for a trail bike with this much travel. But the Spur is like 26, so it's about 3.5 pounds lighter. And you do notice it on these kind of climbs like this one. You definitely feel the weight of this, but it's not bad. You know, this is my local trail, so it's like I'm used to hitting these climbs at a certain speed on the Spur, and especially my cross-country bike, so I have more of a reference point. Usually when I go up into the mountains to ride, I don't notice the weight of bikes as much on the climbs, because I just don't climb those trails as often. Yeah, like you can just move this bike around the trail and it just holds its line so well. It feels so just stable on the downhills, and just like it holds its line well when it gets rough, and you can throw it around. It's exactly the balance I was looking for, because like I said, and I think my first look video is, I wanted a bike that was just more travel than the Spur, but more playful than the Transition Sentinel. And this bike so far, even on these more cross-country type trails, are really showing that this bike nailed it for that. So I've been keeping this bike, the suspension, the rear suspension, in the middle position this entire ride, because that's just kind of how I would roll trails like this. I haven't even tried it in the open position, and the suspension already feels just fantastic on the downhills. And I'll say that the bike pedals really well. Like, I don't notice any suspension bob in the middle setting. So like I said, yeah, that's the setting I would just keep it in for rolling terrain. So I'll say that the one-up dropper post has been great so far on this ride. It's just, I've used one-up dropper posts on so many bikes, and they're just smooth. I use it a lot on this trail because like it's constantly up and down. The other thing that's great about this bike is pedal strikes, or the lack of. I've already would have had like 5 pedal strikes on my Spur because it has longer crank arms. These 170s are perfect. Somebody asked me why have I not changed the crankset on my Spur. You know, I just wanted to keep it stock for my test. And I usually don't hold bikes as long as I've held the Spur. I usually like to keep them stock, so when I sell them, I'm just selling them like I got them. So the last thing that I'll comment on before I close out this video is the tires. Tires feel great. Like, they don't feel like super light on the uphills. I mean, you can feel the weight. A little sluggish on the uphills, but on the downhills, these tires have really good grip. Yeah, so far so good on the tires. The real test will tell is up in the mountains, but on these conditions, it's great cornering grip. So that's going to wrap up this first ride review of the Specialized Stumpjumper. First impressions are really good. Playful bike. It's stable on the downhills, but just really agile. It can really move it around. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot during the video, so everything that I've said should really cover the first ride. Yeah, I think I'm really gonna have a blast on this bike. Like I said, it's really fitting that bill of being just enough bike for most of the trails that I ride, not over biked on more tame trails like this one. So yeah, that'll do it for this one. Thanks for watching.